Hello and welcome to the official Sea of Thieves podcast, and this one's a special. We're going to be talking about all things lore. But before we dive into that, let's introduce who's at the table today. We've got...
My name's Richard Dinnick. I am the Senior Narrative Designer.
I'm Mike Chapman. I'm Creative Director.
I'm John McMurtry, Head of Video Production.
I'm Shelley Preston, Associate Design Director.
I'm James Bowden, Social Media Lead.
Cool. So with Sea of Thieves Season 16, there's going to be a lot of interesting new changes for Captain Flameheart and the Reaper's Bones. But before we get into that, let's take a second to step back and reflect on who is Captain Flameheart. For those that don't know, who is this pirate and what's his place in the Sea of Thieves? Mike.
Thank you. He's the real hero of the game. No, well, maybe he is. No, he's Royal Highness. He is the would-be skeleton king of the Sea of Thieves. He is an ashen skeleton lord. So he has been transformed by the magic of the Sea of Thieves to become the form he is today. So he's a fearsome figure with a beating heart within his chest that literally represents his passion, his burning passion to be in the Sea of Thieves and to conquest these lands. But he's also, fair to say, probably a bit of a misunderstood figure. Like for us, Captain Flameheart taps into, I think, what's powerful about the pirate life for all of us growing up, which is that sense to not be controlled and to have freedom and to make your own rules. And that was his background, to escape the tyranny of the real world and escape into a place where he could have this endless freedom. So I would hope that people see something to sympathise with Captain Flameheart. But today, he's very much a fearsome figure. He's this legendary pirate that has very much become this dark pirate legend, and he has aspirations to become the king of the Sea of Thieves.
And he's been in Sea of Thieves since before we even launched. Like, we actually had him there in the E3 2016 trailer.
Yeah, he was.
So why was it important to have a character like you've mentioned a little bit there, but why is it important to have a character like Flameheart at the centre of stories in Sea of Thieves?
It's a great question, and I'll try and keep it as short and succinct as possible. But there is, just for a bit of background, and I'm sure everyone listening in will understand this, but their foundational storytelling and world building in Sea of Thieves is based on this notion that the Sea of Thieves is a real place. We could leave this podcast and go there today if we had the map to find it somewhere near the Bermuda Triangle in the real world. And it's this pirate world beyond the horizon where the golden age of piracy lives forever. So, what was the question again? Why was he there?
Why isn't something that he's been there from the
Sorry, I was building up to that, as you can tell. So,
Cut that.
No, leave it in. This is just open and transparent. No, but like the way we see all these characters, and there have been a few characters, Captain Flameheart being one of the main ones, that have been with us in some of the very early trailers. But it's based on this notion that Sea of Thieves, land beyond the horizon where the pirate life lives forever. But this idea that the Sea of Thieves, anyone who gets to the Sea of Thieves has answered the call of adventure. They've sought something beyond what the real world can give them. So the Sea of Thieves is very much this meeting point in the real world where anything's possible, where people answer the call of adventure. So with a lot of our early characters, we explored the notion of the Sea of Thieves can give you things that the real world can't. So you become who you were always meant to be in the Sea of Thieves. And because of that, a lot of our early characters explored the morality of people and how that becomes transformed when they come to the Sea of Thieves. So a literal figure who's so passionate about being a pirate, he has this beating flame in his chest. Flameheart was always the embodiment of the dark, or the perceived dark side of that. So thematically, Captain Flameheart has always been like, we're trying not to say main characters. Pirates are our main characters. That's the way we see it. But he's right there with the pirate lord as almost the antithesis of what that role is. He is one of them. He is one of the main characters in the game. And he was important to explore really early on thematically.
And as a character, he's got a lot of story there already. Like, he's been on a bit of a journey. Like, he's,
to say the least.
Now this is there's some bits of his story that have been in sort of elements outside of the game, like in novels, etc. But obviously a pirate cursed into skeletal form, destroyed by a pirate alliance in the Sea of Thieves, trapped in his own remains for years and years, and then released by Captain Pendragon. But in a world where pirates players are creating their own stories, why is it important for us to have a narrative, to have things changing for, say, this particular character, Captain Flameheart? Why is it important to have a narrative running throughout the years alongside those stories that we create?
Oh, there's so many, there's so many facets to that. But I think the core of it is the idea that Sea of Thieves is this canvas for players to live their own stories. It's a canvas for imagination. But we've always believed that a world that you understand at a foundational level, you understand what the characters represent and what they're saying, why the world is the way it is, why islands are named the way they are, past adventures that have happened before you got there, a world that's got a sense of permanence and a sense of history, we believe makes it easier for players who invest in that to have their own adventures, because you believe you're doing it on a world that's really been thought about quite deeply, which it has, if you can tell. But I just think it's all part of empowering players to have their own story. It's never to detract from that. If anything, it's to empower that, because you're not the one bringing life to the world alone. The world already has that sense of history and life. You're just adding to that. You're the next ones in line telling your stories. Yeah.
And what do you think it's like, Shale, I'll ask you, like, what do you think it's like to sort of, what is the opportunity we have when we are able to tell stories over extended periods of time?
For me, I think it's really exciting because we do have this almost endless opportunity with this living, breathing world. As Mike said, like, the world is changing, and sometimes it's, players are reacting to that, or the world is reacting to players. We have this long kind of journey that players can go on, and I think it's a canvas for inspiring better role play for players as well. So you might align yourself with what Flameheart stands for, and that can strengthen how you see yourself in the world and how you want to role play in Sea of Thieves. Or maybe you just align yourself with the way the Pirate Lord and his sense of morality and his pirate's code. And I think us being able to unveil bits and pieces of story and evolve that means that the players' gameplay themselves and their role play and how they see themselves in the world is also ever evolving. So the fact that we get to tell this story, it makes it feel more real, because it isn't a story that just has an end and you close the book and it's done. Yeah. It's a living, breathing story that's going to be ongoing for as long as Sea of Thieves is around.
And obviously, Richard, you're sort of deep into that. You're there every month crafting new stories. Like, what's the opportunity for you? How do you see that?
It's such an exciting game to work on, and to work with Mike is a treat. It is. He's a genius, everyone.
Leave that in. Don't you dare cut that.
Can you make that? Can you make an animated thumbnail that's just that?
Don't cut that. Just
I was thinking that obviously we were BAFTA nominated as one of the best evolving games, and that's what we do. We evolve, we change. It's different to when I arrived on these shores about 3 years ago, to never mind what it was on day one. So, and I get, sometimes players get frustrated, as we do, that we can only shine the focus spotlight of our lighthouse on one particular aspect of the game, or one particular trading company, or whoever it is at one time. But that's the only frustration, and otherwise it's really the sky's the limit on what we can think of to put in the game to excite players and to get the lore hounds drooling at the prospect of new lore drops. So it's a fantastic job. Honestly,
I think you're right, though, that is the biggest challenge, is that when we're looking for seasons, we're looking at seasons and the gameplay that we want to bring, like mechanically or emotionally, the features of that season might take us down a certain path from a story point of view. We don't just want to ever bolt anything on or craft it on. It has to be true to what we're trying to achieve with that season, which means sometimes, this season isn't about continuing what's just happened with Flameheart's story, for example, or with something else you've seen elsewhere. And we feel that as well, that like we'd love to just be able to continuously tell every bit of the story, but the kind of gameplay and that evolution of that is also like key.
Maybe this is really obvious, actually, but the world for our players and the world for the characters in that world are very similar. Like the characters who found the Sea of Thieves before players booted up the game were impaired by that same freedom and were transformed as a result. And it's literally the focus of the gameplay. We give players so much freedom and they gravitate towards certain styles of play. Are they going to gravitate towards PvP and the Reapers? Have they always wanted to play an adventure game, so they gravitate more toward the PvE style of play? And that idea of crossing the Devil's Shroud into the Sea of Thieves and escaping into another world is exactly how we want players to feel when they boot up the game. So I think there's a great parallel between the world building and the experience that we want our players to have. But even the idea of what differentiates Sea of Thieves is the freedom we try and give our players. But that's exactly what's special about the pirate life, and it's why that theme is matched to the gameplay. So I guess we believe wholeheartedly that the fantasy, the player fantasy, and the history of the lore are absolutely one. And I think that's another reason why we've thought long and hard about the stories and the characters, is because we're trying to inspire that feeling in our players through having these great examples of characters like Captain Flameheart, or almost represent that notion, like so many characters in the game, the Siren Queen, the Pirate Lord, the Great Warrior. These are sirens, merfolk, I mean, the list goes on, the skeletons, the phantoms. Like, can you ultimately survive in the Sea of Thieves if you don't transform? And I think that's the story we're really telling. Like, who really has a successful decade of life in the Sea of Thieves without eventually succumbing to something? And the Pirate Lord stayed true to the crew bond, but he himself is a ghost, and he gets to live on and tell his stories. So players are on that journey as well. Like, can you stay yourself, or does who you really are inside have to eventually take physical form in the Sea of Thieves? And like, we love that idea. So.
I was just going to say, you triggered something in me, that it's a beautiful conceit and a kind of spot the difference between the Pirate Lord who greets you on the maiden voyage and Flameheart, who is now sitting at Reaper's hideout waiting for you. You have to seek him out. There's no he's going to come and see you and go, well, this is the code. Although they do have edicts, of course, the Reaper's bones, but they're far darker than look after your friends and everyone's welcome.
But there is that, like, Flameheart could have been the brother of the Pirate Lord in another life. They are the same.
Two sides of the same coin.
The same things drive them, but one turned a different corner. One chose themselves and power over others.
We have lots of different ways of telling stories in Sea of Thieves, obviously. There's the world building that you were talking about, Richard. And we've got obviously the more obvious narrative experiences like, say, a Tall Tale, for example. But one thing we did back in 2022 were a year's worth of adventures. So I'm curious to know, what did we learn from that style of storytelling, that frequency of storytelling as well? And maybe, James, if you want to talk about maybe what landed with the community in that as well.
I can give it a go.
Yeah.
Say some words. No, definitely, like, within the adventures, obviously we had so many different styles of adventures. One of the craziest things about that year was, like, one month it was a detective thing going between islands, like seeing the death of a key character, and then the next it was I'm just trying to think now, but I know the ones I want to talk about. The ones I want to talk about are the decision points. That's why I'm stumbling on everything else. So I just want to get to the decision points, because they were the ones. It was Lost Sands, which is obviously players deciding the fate of what was Golden Sands Outpost, and then Return of the Damned, which was deciding between Flameheart and Pendragon themselves. And like, I think those were definitely like some really key times where we saw players absolutely, planting their flag in the ground, as it were. Not that they don't often do that anyway, but those were some clear, like, call to actions. And I especially remember around Lost Sands, like, the amount of people creating, like, posters to try and get people to, or trying to argue
like
why.
Campaigns,
it was like campaigns,
argue,
and it was like, this is why we need to blow it up. This is why we need to. But obviously, we never told anyone what was going to happen, and that's one of the craziest things, because I know you had ideas for either or.
Both,
And I know a lot of people said with Return of the Damned, they're like, nah, Flameheart, you only ever planned on him returning. That's not true.
It's not true.
I remember looking at the stats, behind the scenes, and it was never certain.
No. Well, talk about a learning. I mean, that was a learning. It was so cool. People thought it was rigged, and like it would be a lot easier if it was rigged. None of us would sleep at night, so we didn't do that.
But no, like that was one of those times where you absolutely saw players choosing that I am like a Reaper. As you were saying, it's like, what is that piracy that is like at your heart? Is it that just like ruthless, take everything you can, like or is it that, no, I'm going to stand by everyone, even though this is probably, and it was trickier to take supplies to Golden Sands Outpost than just drive explosive rowboats into it, but the players made their decision, and I think those are some of the times where you really feel like the community, like the voice of that role playing, like absolutely rose up, and it was amazing. It was also a lot of work that then got lost in a PowerPoint in terms of the what wasn't chosen, but those decision points were incredible for that, and just seeing players through the months, like following the characters' narratives, like players getting behind what Merrick was up to, and obviously Sarah, and then all the little bits that were going on month to month. It was good fun.
It was a really interesting sort of way to introduce new characters or get to know characters better. Like you say, Merrick was obviously a big part of the adventures, but we obviously introduced Belle in the adventures as well. Is there something about that frequency or that style of like experience that is better at telling stories, or do you think it's just another feather in the cap of storytelling in Sea of Thieves?
I mean, some of the stuff that we did in the first couple of years of the game, where, I mean, we've done this consistently throughout, but what we did with the Killer Whale and Merrick's ship becoming the Reaper's hideout, the whole story with Wanda the Warsmith, the Skeleton Curse, the Burning Blade, her hideout, all of that kind of evolving world building is something that we love. It makes the most of the fact that Sea of Thieves is live all the time, well, almost all the time. It's a window you can just look through and escape into, and that is not just a way we deliver the game experience. That is always there as a canvas to tell a story on, which is such a cool thing for a team like ours. But I think what was wonderful about Adventures was we were able to move the world forward a lot quicker than we would have been able to with the kind of more subtle world building and world changes. So I think that was what we loved about them. I think, to James's point, the decision points really made the most of that, where it was a monthly moment in time that people would look forward to. And I think we look back really fondly on the decision points to go, there's something in that idea that needs to come back. I mean, I do, for proof that it wasn't rigged, look how long it took to actually bring Port Merrick in. So I think we'd need to, if that ever came back, we'd need to think about that. But I think I'm kind of glad that we've tried a different styles of world building. There's definitely positives from Adventures. I mean, it was awesome to work with you on cinematic trailers, have these awesome cinematic trailers that bring the world to life. I think to reflect on it, I would say that the more of a gameplay impact is what we'd look for now. I think some of the adventures, to your point, we had lots of different styles. We tried lots of different things deliberately.
You got to use that model of the Shrouded Ghost.
Finally, and then delete it again because it doesn't exist anymore. Like, there were some great examples of some gameplay in there. So probably styles of adventure we'd probably be keen to explore more in the future. But I think the key for us is, I guess, trying to wed that idea of ongoing storytelling that's more consistent, but with more of a gameplay focus. And really trying to thread that line of, because it's totally understandable. In the past, we had issues where people would miss an adventure and they'd lose the thread of the story. And the emotional beats in that story, you can only really appreciate them if you really invested along the way. It's like a TV show. It's a kind of serialized show. That was the format that we went for. Whereas I think we want to try and thread the line where the storytelling is embedded more clearly into the season, right? That's what we're actually looking at for the future, which is doing more seasonal storytelling. But as another learning from Adventure, if a major moment happens, I think we'd think long and hard if that was something missable. That you go on holiday, you miss this major moment, and you've got no way to see it again. I think major moments in our story we want to have as a permanent fixture.
And we've got
in
examples of that already, obviously, in the Tall Tales.
Yeah, there is, but there's kind of great moments that happen, those adventures that we would love to live on in the game in some form. There's a challenge with that. But yeah, there's so much story that's already in the game as a permanent fixture. But I think new story that we add, we just want to think long and hard about making the most of a evolving live service, that it's always available. And you can have these moments in time, but also you don't want to miss the best bits. So it's a real challenge.
Giving players more opportunity to have that experience as well. Like adventures moved so fast that you could get behind quite quickly, and there was a lot of story happening in a very compact timeline. So I think we'd look to kind of soften that so that, you know, players have got more opportunity to come along for the journey, and there's less kind of moment to moment intricate stuff to miss from one month to another. So to your point, you can't really miss as much.
No, one thing I would say as well is clearly a community like different styles of storytelling. Like we love tall tales. We love making tall tales. I love to think we'll make more tall tales in the future. Like, you know, no plans, but there's so many different styles of storytelling. And
how many tall tales did you say?
How many? When people gravitate towards different styles. I mean, ultimately, from our perspective, when we're working on features, everything is storytelling. Yeah. The burning blade, the skeleton, everything's storytelling. Some people see it that way, some people don't. I do think the people that are heavily invested, everything's got a fragment of world building to it, which obviously hasn't. It's thought about that way. But I think we do want to push world building back into the spotlight more, informed by the learnings from adventures.
Talking about people who are heavily invested into the lore, there is a section of the Sea of Thieves community that are...
Yeah, so you're going to say me. I love it. I do love it. But no, there are definitely some, like, you know, you've got groups like Ancient Isles University who are always like the first ones I typically see, like especially when we've had the cards recently in the Order of Souls tent, like they're immediately there. Update day, what's new? Like, let's go. But even someone like Mutinous Mel, who is obviously, like, she's made being a Reaper like her entire online persona, but then she is also heavily invested in any lore driving around Reapers. Like, I know especially obviously like the Burning Blade appearing was huge for her, and she just gets behind like everything lore wise as well, which
probably listening to this then, because
probably is listening to this. But no, I just really enjoy it. Also, while I'm shouting out individuals, it's Captain MacGuffin from Ancient Isles Uni, who is typically the one on Sea of Thieves posts saying, haha, we beat you, you're late. But the thing there is that one of my favorite things with the sneaking the world building in is actually seeing players going and finding it. Because I could easily post everything on the main accounts, but I don't want to. Like, it's seeing players find it, draw their conclusions, come up with their theories. Like, I love the skeleton language. Like, whenever you add a new rune to, like, oh, that rune's not been anywhere before, and it's just like on a cannon, and people are trying to work out what it could mean. And I love all of that stuff. And yeah, there are those people within the community who are absolutely just like ravenous for it. And yeah, unlike people like Dead-Eye Dre, I mean, I should have come with like
scroll.
I like to think, oh, can you edit like now? Can I send you a list and we'll have like a Patreon, Patreon supporter list.
Let's get into the meat then of what's coming with the next season 16. So it's been a little while since the Flameheart story has moved forward in a dramatic fashion, at least anyway. There's been the world building in between, but since season 13, that was when the Burning Blade returned to the waves. What's been happening with Captain Flameheart and the Reaper's Bones in the time in between?
Well, I'll let Shelley take that one. I'll speak for a bit about... Okay. I'll bring people up to speed on what's been going on with Flameheart. So Captain Flameheart has got his orb, his oracle, and his oracle is telling him terrible secrets, dark secrets, and he's been out hunting. So they told him where the temples were. So he got you to go to the temples, get the secrets from the ancient priests, bring them back to him on the Burning Blade, and he then had to start sifting through them to find what the secrets he was actually after the whole time. And that's where 16 kicks off, really.
Yes. So in season 16, you'll be heading out in search of, well, I should say first, season 16 brings in our first actual on-demand Reaper voyages. Yes. So you can go to your quest table and you can take part in voyages for the Reapers, which is super exciting. They do have a PvP twist because they are Reapers. They're not fully PvE. But we're really excited to be able to expand the kind of scope of the Reapers and the activities that you can do. But my point was, I've forgotten. But yes, the information that you've been gathering. So Flameheart has used this information to gather these ancient memories, and you'll be embarking upon quests with Reaper skeletons by your side, like you will have an army by your side to further uncover the fruits of these secrets to get to what Flameheart really wants, which I won't spoil, but we can get there. But we see in season 16, obviously, Flameheart's story is ratcheting up a level. He's actively sending you out. There are 2 voyages. One is sending you out in search of ancient secrets. Literally, the search for ancient secrets is the name of the voyage. And one is sending you out in search of forces for Flameheart, so his order of bone and blade skeletons. So you're very much working for Flameheart under his orders, finding him information and finding him skeletons for his army. So he's reinforcing.
I'm going to be the voice of the community. Who are the Order of Bone and Blade?
Well, you're about to find out. So the Order of Bone and Blade are Flameheart's most loyal followers. They've been waiting for his return for a very long time. And
think of them like his SAS kind of.
You'll be uncovering them and working alongside them in the Reaper voyages.
There is an undercurrent here as well, to put a real world-building spin on it as well, which is these different groups that we're talking about. Obviously, Flameheart with his connection to the Reapers. Treasure means different things to all these groups. There's treasure in a very literal sense. There's the Order of Souls, where treasure is very much about the knowledge contained within the skulls and the ancient secrets. And I think Flameheart, over this journey he's been on, like he's been involved with many a quarry, he's learned quite powerfully that, well, his treasure is around attaining power. And there's no greater power in the Sea of Thieves than the power of the ancients and what the ancients did. So the ancients themselves, I mean, not going to spill it on this podcast, we'll save it, but the ancients literally represent the origin story of the Sea of Thieves. Yeah. And the Pirate Lord with the Veil of the Ancients has ties to the Sea of the Damned, the Bell connection. There's Flameheart's had a brush with ancient warships in the past, the Ophelia from the Heart of Fire novel. So like he knows very much that truly controlling the Sea of Thieves, he needs to attain ancient power, which by attaining that, we'll learn more about the origin of the Sea of Thieves. So that's kind of the undercurrent going on here. Through his orb, he can learn some of these secrets, and that's why they've been excavating, and that's how it's moving on to Shelley's point and Richard's point in season 16.
Interesting. And just to sort of look even further into the future for a second, is that sort of conflict between the 2 sides of the coin, the Pirate Lord and Flameheart, is that the kind of core of the Sea of Thieves story for the future? Or can you imagine other stories coming in?
It's never. There's always stories to tell. There's always new stories to tell. So be careful. No, let's say it. I mean, Captain MacGuffin's worked it out already, I'm sure. But there's definitely a point here. So that backdrop to how we opened with, how long can you survive in the Sea of Thieves before transforming? And that's what a lot of these various groups in the Sea of Thieves have in common. And we go back right to the heart of the Captain Flameheart story. Why is he the way he is? Because he's escaped rule and tyranny from the real world and a brush with a certain maritime company.
An organisation.
So it is, all I will say, is interesting to think about what could bring the 2 flip sides of a coin together. Yeah. Is that possible? What would it take to bring various forces together? And it's probably very obvious now. but I think that there are grander stories that will unfold. That, of course, will have an impact on gameplay, core world building. But yeah, we're very much in the let's explore the ancient power that Flameheart is seeking.
And we have touched on this a bit, but Shelley, how are we going to deliver Like, how are we going to continue to deliver stories that players do love? Like, in the way that we run Sea of Thieves with seasons, like, how is that going to appear?
I mean, I think we touched on a lot of this earlier, but I think what we'll be looking to do as we move forward is to marry more of the ongoing story interwoven into the seasons, which we have done, but we definitely have a renewed focus on that, I would say, more closely tying world building with the changes that you'll see as part of a season, so it feels more interconnected, and then weaving that into more of the activities and more of the gameplay that will unfold throughout a season as well.
Amazing.
Shelley and I have been working far closer to that end in kind of recent months, which has been lovely. Gameplay and narrative together.
You said something absolutely spot on earlier around shining the light on certain groups, and there is to tell grander stories in the future, you almost need to give certain groups their airtime, focus, as it were, to kind of set up this broader tapestry of these different groups. And I think there's other groups out there that we felt the presence of. Dark Brethren still have a role to play in all this, the mysterious Captain. Like there's lots of forces at play that will get there. They'll get their time.
Amazing. So lots of interesting lore related things to come, especially in season 16, which is going to be launching later in May. So I think that's us. I just want to say thank you to everyone that joined us today, and we will see you next time for another podcast halfway through season 16. So we'll see you then. Bye now.